Good afternoon, family. This is Dr. Kia Pruitt. It is Wednesday, February the 22nd, 2023, and the time is 1:11 p.m. Hello, welcome everybody. Golden rising, joyous rising, grand rising, great rising, rich risings. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. This is Dr. Kia Pruitt just coming on briefly because I've been hearing information about what's going on in the financial markets. So my encouragement to you today, for all of those who have asked me, what shall we do with high inflation rates, and with the stock market having issues, what should we do? Where do we place our money? And Dr. Kia Pruitt is just here to say, follow the money. Do what the big money says to do if you have assets and not what they necessarily say. Good morning. It's so good to see you all. Happy Wednesday. Hello, Fort Myers, Fort Meade, excuse me. Family, South Africa, Grand Rising. Hello, Kathy. Our sister is here, our moderator. Good evening. Greetings, everybody. Good afternoon. I hope you all are having an amazing afternoon or morning or evening. Hello, New Jersey. I hope you all got to see the show that we did on Tuesday, yesterday, with Andy Schekman. It was phenomenal. We talked about how the whole world is now admitting to returning to the gold standard. And that even includes states within America. And I've been saying this for a while when I presented the article that 42 states repealed the taxes from precious metals. I said what they were doing was preparing our hearts and our minds to release precious metals to be used as money. So hello, South Carolina, North Carolina, Central Virginia, and freezing Michigan. Oh my goodness. You're not going to want to hear this. It's 80 degrees here in Northern Florida. Hello, Parkland, Florida. I'm sure you're experiencing some very comfortable weather too. And I see Texas is in the house. Check in, family. I'm so glad to see you all. Alabama's in the house, New Jersey. I am hailing from Jacksonville, Florida. We have the most beautiful beaches, pristine white sand beaches where a lot of people don't necessarily visit, because when you think of Florida, you think of West Palm Beach, you think of Miami or Miami, as we say. In Spanish, Miami, or you think of those other places, Destin Beach, you think of places that are closer to the south. And if you like theme parks, you're thinking about middle Florida, like Orlando. You have a lot of people that love the beaches in Clearwater, St. Pete area, but a lot of people overlook Jacksonville. And honestly, we kind of like it that way because we don't have the severe traffic that a lot of your southern Florida cities have. But check in. It's so good to see you all. We had an amazing show. Thank you so much. Yesterday with Andy Schekman of Miles Franklin. If you get a chance, please go and visit the channel and look at that podcast, because he did a lot of talking about the world returning to the gold standard. And I wanted to reiterate some of the things that he said, and just to let you know that even if your budget doesn't allow for gold, family, there are other investments to look at. Now, before I get into today's show, I want to talk about how when you really have a mind to do something, you can do it. For example, I heard a testimony about a person who thought they didn't have money to actually get into precious metals. So what she did, and I heard this on Pimpy's show, he said what she did was she got a second job. And she said, you know what, I want to invest in metals. I want to get ahead of the curve. So she got a second job. Everybody's not able to do that. But this was a beautiful testimony. She got a second job, and she just, whatever she earned from that job, she rolled it over into precious metals. And now she has a great big stack, and found out that she actually likes this secondary job better than she likes the first job. Another testimony, and I've shared this with people, things that people can do, is of people who have sold bottles and cans, just the little things you can do to prepare. And it's exciting when you ask yourself, how can I, versus saying I can't do something. But when you say I can't, sometimes you can block yourself and you shut down your brain for opportunities. But when you ask yourself, how can I do this? How can I get into the precious metals market? How can I afford the things that I may not necessarily think I can afford now? You open up windows of opportunities and your brain starts to expand. So what I've heard is people selling cans and bottles and taking them and just getting those few coins and rolling them over into pre-constitutional silver and or silver rounds. So this is just a precursor to the show, things I'm going to talk about today, family. Again, I said follow the money, and I'll tell you why I said that. Hi, Jersey Shore. No winter snow. Yay! Hello, DC. Oh, somebody's coming in at 12:12 their time. Hello, Sister Karen Barnes. Grand afternoon. It's good to see you. Love, light, peace, and joy to you there in Alabama and all over the world. We see chilly New Jersey checking in. Pennsylvania is here. I love you too. So East Kansas is saying, what are you saying in East Kansas? Is it chilly there? Oh, wow. Well, thank you. Welcome, Texas. Welcome, everybody. Hello. Somebody is asking, when is the RV hitting? Well, I can tell you this. Hi, Delray Beach, Florida. Beautiful weather there, too. I can tell you that I'm hearing that things are moving along. I don't know how much. So people will give me information. I don't know how much to share because I don't know, if they're being watched or if they have, partial NDA. I don't think they would tell me anything if they had NDAs, but I am hearing that the money is moving down. I'm not the type of person that, I'm not high up is what I'm trying to say. I don't have those type of security clearances where I will know if people are being funded and what that looks like and what tier we're in. I hear that, if you're the internet group, you're tier 4. So I don't know. I can just tell you that people are saying some very positive things about money moving and about how their accessing their bank accounts has changed so they can see that there's a quantum financial system that's now on board. But let's get into the show today, family. Good morning again. On yesterday, Andy Schectman came on and he gave us some good news. We shared about how the whole world is moving to the gold standard. Now, if you know, and you do over here, about the beauty of NESARA and what those NESARA benefits are, one of the things about NESARA is that the world will return to the gold standard, right? That there was an agreement of 209 countries that the world will return to using gold as money. So when people ask me, is NESARA here? What I would say is look at the signs. Now, I know we're going to talk about follow the money, but look at the signs to see exactly where we are, because the release of the RV and the release of NESARA is time sensitive, but it's more event driven. Okay, and what we see in terms of signs is we see articles now coming out that says that the world is hurtling back or rushing back towards gold as money. Now, people historically have said, especially economists, you can't trust gold. Gold is a relic. Gold is something of the past. It's old. It's outdated. They confiscated our gold. We'll never go back to the gold standard. Well, those people are only telling you information that they've been taught, but we see now evidence that the world is rushing back towards gold. And I've shared many videos of how the BRICS Union, led by Russia, or Vladimir Putin of Russia, led the entire world to drop the United States dollar and rush towards gold. So look at this. The world is hurtling back towards gold as money. This is exciting, especially for those who want to know, is NESARA here? Yes, the National Economic Security and Reformation Act is here. We can see the signs. So I'm going to have to change that title to follow the signs. The National Economic Security and Reformation Act was signed into law in 2000 under President Clinton. Even though he didn't want to do it. This law was to guarantee our freedom by restoring republics here nationally and all over the world, restoring national governments, our lawful government, as well as all the laws that are attached to the government. And one of those things is using sound money. Historically, sound money has been gold and silver. So let's look back at this article that says this is gold's return as money. This is from Alistair MacLeod. He said that there was a consequence of Russia and the Asian allies embracing the gold backing for their currencies. And this is something that the West, they, according to the articles, and they have to play this out, this movie that we're watching, they have to make it seem like America had no idea that putting sanctions on Putin was going to lead all of the nations to drop the United States dollar and then having them to rush towards the gold standard. So just know you're watching a movie. Of course, the West knew that, okay, behind the scenes, but their response to Russia and the Asian allies moving away from the United States dollar and going towards gold-backed currencies, the response of the states was then to release legislation to also have the American states to use gold and silver as money. But we'll get into that, and Andy did a phenomenal job. I'm reiterating that today because I'm going to show you something that's going on in the markets. So they say here that the consequences of Russia and her Asian allies embracing gold for their currencies were poorly understood in the Western capital markets. And this will lead to a destruction of the global fiat currency system. And I will show you the evidence of that. Here it says, according to the evidence, which is widely ignored in our Western capital markets, a move to Russia to put a new trade settlement currency and possibly the Russian ruble, as well as a new gold standard, is becoming a certainty. We knew it over here that it was happening. It's just that people, maybe they weren't aware, or they didn't have all the information, or they really thought it would never happen. But this is a weapon of mass fiat currency destruction when you see the world drop the United States dollar and return to gold as money. But when you use gold to undermine the Western system, then what you're going to see is Russia and other countries, according to this article, have an advantage. So they have to make it, drum it up, make it seem so dramatic. Oh, the East is going to have an advantage over the West. And only for a short time period, it will look like that. It will look like they have an advantage because people don't know how the West is also preparing. However, let's talk a little bit about, before we get into how the West is preparing, what's going on in the markets. You and I over here, we all know that one of the things that's happened is high inflation. So as Andy Schectman has taught us, and you all, if you're an economist, you know this, when they leave the dollar and use something else for trade, those dollars will come flooding back home, and that decimates the dollar or bring the value of the dollar down significantly. So all those dollars came flooding back. For example, you had al-Sudani of Iraq tell his citizens to stop using the United States dollar and trust in their own currency. You've had Zimbabwe say the same thing. You've had country after country tell their citizens, stop trading with the dollar. You don't need the dollar. You heard Ghana say it. Ghana came up with their own gold coin saying, stop trading with the dollar. You don't need it. We have our own currency. We're stabilizing our economy, and we're backing up our currency with the money that we had repatriated, or the gold that we had repatriated back to ourselves. So keep in mind, their currencies are not just backed by gold. You have countries that are rich in minerals. They have diamonds as well. They have oil. They have copper. They have silver. They have all type of zinc. You have some that even really have vibranium, as expressed in the movie Wakanda. So all of these resources will back these countries' currencies, which will make their currency strong against the dollar. So this is why people are investing in the dinar, the Vietnamese dong, the the Venezuelan bolivar, the Zimbabwean zim, the Indian rupee, the Indonesian rupiah, and other currencies, because they're backing those currencies with precious metals and other commodities or resources that each of those countries have. In the meantime, what happens is that the United States fiat dollar, the greenback, that will become decimated and worthless. And this is why we have an article that we see right here today about the United States stock market. This was published on February the 21st, just yesterday at almost 3 o'clock, about 10 minutes before 3 Eastern Standard Time. United States stocks are in death zone, and it could sink 26% according to Morgan Stanley. So it could and it will sink, because when you drop the United States dollar, the dollar loses value, and all dollar denominated assets will also lose their value. So we know over here that not only will the United States dollar lose value, but anything tied to the United States dollar, because of it being dropped in value, the dollar dropping in value, and also because we're in a Shemitah cycle. So what a lot of people don't realize is that we're talking about the Hebrew calendar, because we're going to return back towards that time where we calculated things according to the moon, according to the celestial heavens. So we are still, in a sense, behind the scenes, going on Hebrew time. That's why we talk about gematria. Gematria is a way that they calculate or use, it's a way that they speak in language. So we're talking about this time period being the Shemitah, which is the end of a 7-year cycle. So again, for all of you all who are new to the channel, the Shemitah time period is a time period when the children of Israel came out of Egypt or of slavery. They went through the wilderness and they went into the promised land. Once they got into the promised land, they were told to count a year of a 7-year cycle. So count 7 years. And on that 7th year, they were supposed to have a year of release. That's what Shemitah means, release or let go, to set free. During that Shemitah cycle, anybody who owed them debts were to be completely released. They were supposed to be set free and just have the debts canceled. What happened is we kept onto those, we held onto those traditions. But when the nefarious people came online and they took power and control of the system, instead of having a great release during the Shemitah cycle, what they did was they further enslaved us. So they had a crashing of the markets. They caused trauma, financial trauma, housing market crash, financial crash, stock market crash at the end of the 7-year cycle known as the Shemitah. Additionally, get back to NESARA, what was supposed to happen during the year of 2001, because it was the end of a 7-year cycle. They were supposed to release NESARA and have it come from the Pentagon. Instead, they took the gold out of the towers, the gold that was supposed to be put forward to pay off the debt. They imploded the towers, and then they sent something, a CGI or some type of weaponry, into the Pentagon from which the announcement was supposed to come. So again, instead of having a release, we had trauma, we had fear, we had turmoil. The whole country, the whole world was affected by 9/11. And they used that as an opportunity to further enslave us and take away our freedoms, to further surveil us, to traumatize us by forcing us to strip down when we go through the airports and being searched and patted down. Anything to cause us to emit loosh, which is that negative psychic energy that you release from your body when you're traumatized. So again, you were supposed to count 7 years from the time the children of Israel entered into the promised land. And at the end of that 7-year cycle, have a Shemitah and a year of release, a jubilee, a letting go, a setting free, and a time of just expressing your sovereignty and joy for no longer being in debt, because debt is slavery. So what I did was I went through a time period, actually, and I did it on my channel. If I have time, I'll bring it up today to show you Shemitah cycles, 7-year cycles. And I went back to the 1920s And what we saw was during the Great Depression, that was a Shemitah. That was 7 years. They were supposed to have a release, but instead you had a depression and a financial collapse 7 years later. And every 7 years, all the way up until even 2008 with the housing market collapse and what happened with the Lehman Brothers. 7 years later, you had another crash in 2015. And then the next Shemitah cycle was in 2022. It started during Rosh Hashanah, September the 15th, I think it was, 2022. And we're in that Shemitah year all the way up through until September the 15th, 2023. So we're in that Shemitah cycle. And we know from listening to our higher selves and being in tune with spirit that this Shemitah cycle, we will have our year of release and our jubilee from all debt, from the deep state, from control, from all the powers that were, and we will experience great joy and peace. Still, though, you're going to have a decimation of the old economy, the old United States dollar, that fiat-based system, which really fiat, as we learned before, just means they declared it. It came out of nowhere. It's backed by nothing, the United States dollar is. So it says here, U.S. stocks have climbed to unsustainable highs and face imminent losses once investors realize there will be no Federal Reserve pivot later this year, according to Morgan Stanley. They're trying to prepare us, I believe. So Michael Wilson is the United States executive strategist at Morgan Stanley, and he's a longtime Wall Street bear. He warned in an analysis note this week that the stock market has entered a level known as the death zone. It's known as the death zone, which is a name used in mountaineering to describe an altitude so high that climbers do not have enough oxygen to breathe. Many fatalities, he goes on to say, in high altitude mountaineering have been caused by the death zone, either directly through loss of vital function or indirectly by wrong decisions made under stress or physical weakening, that lead to accidents, Wilson wrote. This is a perfect analogy for where equity investors find themselves today, and quite frankly, where they've been many times over the past decade. So he suggests that the S&P 500 could tumble to 3,000 points within months. And that's down about 26% from current levels. So we see it's happening now. We can tell that we're there. We're at the time period or the point where the stock market is about to collapse. He says that it's a time to head back to base camp before the next guide down in earnings. So this is a gloomy forecast, according to economists and forecasters who don't know that, we're moving towards a system that will be backed by gold. But it is a very brutal year for the stock market. It's the worst since 2008 financial crisis. Remember, we're talking about Shemitah cycles. Remember, I told you 2008 was a Shemitah cycle. It was the end of a 7-year cycle. It's important for them to bring that up because right after that, you had 2015, then you had the year 2022 through 2023. So they're prepping you without telling you about Shemitah. But that's my job and the job of others. Like Jonathan Kahn, I believe they talk about, who wrote the book called The Harbinger. Now, I know this information being Hebrew, studying Hebrew culture, and being guided actually by spirit to study those things that are in alignment with my tradition. So it says all three indexes tumbled in 2022, snapping a 3-year win streak. The Dow Jones Industrial Average ended the year down 8.8%, which was the best of that rate. Oh, I see it's moving. The best of the three. The S&P sank 19.4%, while the tech-heavy NASDAQ composite plunged 33.1%. I can see, excuse me. So what's going to happen is the stock market, I did hear that noise. The stock market will collapse. It will crash. And what I've heard is that the Dow won't come back. And I think I can't remember. I don't know about the S&P. I don't think that one won't come back, but the NASDAQ may. So what I'm saying is when they're starting, when they're telling you what's going to happen, just be proactive and think about where do you want to protect your assets if you are invested in the stock market. I'm not going to say either way because I'm not a financial advisor, but I can tell you what the big money is doing. I can tell you what they're saying. Okay. And I brought that up in the podcast with Andy Sheckman yesterday. I asked him, what did he hear about John Paulson? Let me tell you what John Paulson, who is a billionaire, said should happen. He said, you need gold, not dollars. Now, everybody may not be in position to have gold. So we're going to talk about that. Gold is the standard, but silver linings are great too. We heard that from number 45. So gold is amazing. It has been used historically as money, but silver and gold are constitutional money. Silver is the standard in some ways, in that the dollar, according to the Constitution, is defined as a fixed weight in silver. However, according to Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, only silver and gold can be used to pay off the debt. So what we know is silver and gold. If that's the only thing you can use to pay off the debts, then silver and gold are lawful money according to our Constitution. So billionaire John Paulson said this on the 15th, which was just 7 days ago. He said he's a hedge fund manager. Let's see, billionaire hedge fund manager John Paulson said, you're better off owning gold. And this is why, because he thinks a dollar is set up for long-term depreciation as the world drifts towards de-dollarization. We've heard de-dollarization in my conversations about Project Sandman. Project Sandman is the agreement between 209 countries that when triggered, they will all drop the dollar, and then the dollar will drop to zero, and all dollar denominated assets will also plunge to zero. This is the great de-dollarization, where they say we're using the dollar no more for trade. That trigger was Putin when he went over to the ukulele to clean it out, and 46 put sanctions on him. Then he dropped the United States dollar. He de-dollared and said, we don't need the dollar for trade anymore. And at that time, when he did that, the Russian ruble became the highest performing currency in the world. And that's because he decided to use the ruble backed by gold and backed by the resources of his country, and to trade, and even to trade for oil, which eventually led Saudi Arabia, from whom everybody was buying oil, but to also leave the United States dollar and join BRICS, join Vladimir Putin, and using gold and other commodities for trade. So Paulson talked about the de-dollarization trend in an interview with the journalist named Elkan. He said the trend is towards de-dollarization, but it will take a while, according to him. I see it happening very, very quickly. Andy Sheckman, the CEO of Miles Franklin, and I came on, I think about in October, and talked about how country after country were leaving or was leaving the United States dollar. So, I mean, from October to now, we see a rapid progression. And I've also done a video, and I'll bring that one up, where I actually name all of the countries that have dropped the United States dollar and left us, United States hegemony, and joined the BRICS Union. So while the United States isn't the economic powerhouse it once was, according to Paulson, it remains dominant in terms of reserve and trade, but other countries, particularly China, have undercut America's economic power. That is eroding the power of the once almighty greenback. So yes, China has undercut the greenback. Russia has, the whole BRICS Union, because if you remember, BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So keep in mind that when we read an article not long ago that said that central banks were hoarding gold, and they hoarded up to, I want to say, 400 tons of gold, which was equivalent to beyond $32 billion. That same article said, yeah, but then there's a secret mystery buyer too of gold, and nobody knows who this mystery buyer is. Well, I came back a week later and I said, we found the mystery buyer. It was China. And we had the article to support our thesis and our assertion that it was China. So you have all these countries working together to leave the United States dollar. But my encouragement to you today is to keep in mind and know that this was all planned. And this is why I bring these reports so that you can be prepared and know the stock market is going to crash. But when you're proactive, you can plan. How you decide to plan is up to you. But I say, and some people would agree with me, and Andy Schectman said this yesterday, follow the money. Billionaire John Paulson said that gold is a better investment than dollars and anything tied to the dollar. People aren't buying Americans' debt anymore. People aren't buying anything that's tied to the United States dollar. So we read the article. I just want to show you this before I get into other places that you can protect your money or put your money. But follow the money. We can see what's going on behind the scenes because the articles are coming out. And remember, President Trump did a speech on December 15th, and that speech actually was on the commemoration date of the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights was signed into law actually in December, on December 15th. So this December 15th, 2022, President Trump took to his Truth social media and said he was signing the digital Bill of Rights. When he signed the digital Bill of Rights, he said, I'm going to rip censorship out from the very foundations so that people can't be censored and that the real news can no longer be suppressed. Right after that, we saw people now coming out to tell the truth. And I did a podcast on that, talking about how you're going to see mainstream media, independent news sources, everybody come out with the truth of what we've been saying all along for years was going to happen. And here we are. So billionaire John Paulson said central banks are replacing dollars with gold, so you're better off investing in precious metals than the United States dollar. This was published by Kitco News. They said gold will increase in value while the United States dollar drops, according to John Paulson, which is the hedge fund manager. That's his outlook. And for the next 3 to 5 years, he contends. So he says there's been a significant increase in a demand from central banks to replace dollars with gold. And I'm just telling you this is so you can be encouraged that NESARA is happening. It's not about you getting gold unless that's what you desire to do, or you being concerned if you don't have the gold. It is to inspire you and encourage you to look towards the future. You can stay in the present, but look towards the future and see what the Almighty, with Source, with the Creator, and all the military people in place that's been helping to restore our freedoms. You can see this time actually happening right now. In real time, we're experiencing it. So we've seen a significant increase in the demand from central banks to replace dollars with gold, which is a good thing. It's good because you know that everything that's in the banks, as long as there's gold that's to hold it, should be safe and mirrored on a quantum financial system. Now, some people have experienced some banks dipping into their account, and that may have been before all the nefarious entities were out. So what a lot of people have done was save enough in the banks to pay their bills. But if they have a significant amount, some of them have decided to roll it over into sound money or hard assets, such as silver, gold, farmland, those type of things, businesses. But according to John Paulson, the banks have worked tirelessly to replace the United States dollar with gold. And he says we're just at the beginning of that trend, that gold will go up and the dollar will go down. I don't know if you've heard me say this, family, but I've always said it's an economic principle. As the United States dollar or fiat dollar decreases in value, precious metals increase or go up in value. So you're better off keeping your investment reserves there, he says, in gold. So a lot of people have saved their money. They don't want to see that money earn no interest. They don't want to see that money theoretically be stolen through bank bail-ins. They want to have a peace of mind. So a lot of these people have decided to put it in gold. With gold, Paulson sees the potential for appreciation, increasing in value, and recommends playing the long game. He highlighted the de-dollarization trend and noted that with sticky inflation fears and new geopolitical tensions, gold is attracting new investments. So new investors, excuse me. So, I know it looks to the naked eye, to our physical eye, like we're going to have war, but that's not going to happen. They're going to drum up these ideologies that we're going to have war, that there's an invasion of aliens, that we found all these UFOs, that, oh my God, spy balloons are coming from everywhere. They're creating all these catastrophes with derailments of trains and all type of things to get us riled up and not allow us to see what's actually going on right before our eyes. Things are actually happening for our good, while the few minions that are still left are doing bad things. However, the world is returning to gold behind the scenes. We've seen those discussions between John Paulson, who is a billionaire, and some of the interviewers with whom he's spoken. And we've seen this article that says that the world is hurtling back towards gold. And let me highlight this article that Andy Schectman brought up yesterday about gold no longer being a barbarous relic, because people would try to tell you we're not moving to a gold standard. Don't believe in those gold bugs. Just forget about this whole NESARA thing. You guys are way out there. They just didn't know. But this article came out earlier this year, and this is how we just knew that this was confirmation that we are moving to the golden age. And I'm going to tell you, the golden age isn't just about money. It's not just about gold. What's more important is moving up to a consciousness where your crown chakra is being activated. It's a spiritual thing. Just like we've had a spiritual warfare, a war between good and evil, now we have a time into which we're ascending that's completely joyous, that's about living a high vibrational life, activating your crown chakra, which is why they use the word corona during that whole CV shutdown, because it was a banking term where they were conversing between each other, talking about the crown. Corona literally means crown, as in your crown chakra, as in your pineal gland being cleansed, you're rising up, increase those consciousness, and you're being activated to your highest self. This is what the gold standard really is about. So yes, we will use gold as money, but we will also use these precious metals to heal us, to raise our vibrations, and just is a symbol. It symbolizes when I was in my growing up in my tradition, we talked about signs and symbols. The creator would give you signs about the age into which you're ascending. We're moving into a golden era, an era of Christos consciousness, rising in consciousness, which is why you see revivals breaking out all over the place, specifically among our young people on college campuses, because it's all spiritual. It's all in alignment with what the creator has in store for us, to live heaven on earth. Now, the scripture says, or I should say one of the prayers says, on earth as it is in heaven. All those things that we've been taught about, the joy, the excitement, the praise, the adoration, the love, the peace, and all those things that they talked about being in a heavenly place, we're going to experience it right here on earth, right here where you are, right here where I am. And this is the ultimate message that I desire for us to get, that we're going to have a spiritual revival where we all ascend in consciousness and have our crown chakra activated, and we'll be able to walk and live and behave like the ascended masters that people call the Buddha, the Christ, Hare Krishna. We'll actually be living in that time in these higher dimensions, and some of you are experiencing it right now. If you want to accelerate that, there are certain things you can do, like walk in nature, drink clean water, fasting, eating live, living foods like living fruits and vegetables, put on gold, copper, silver, and any precious metals, or walk among the creation, and you will feel your highest self being activated. Earlier today, I was on a podcast with Gold Star mother Susan Price and her cohort, who is a master in yoga. And we talked about how you don't even have to use, call it yoga, but the practice of uniting the mind, body, and the breath through deep breathing and just becoming one with the creator and speaking to your highest self, you will become activated in those ways. So let's get back to gold no longer being a barbarous relic. It's important to bring this out again because many people are asking, when is NESARA going to happen? When are we going to see it? It's happening right now. So January the 27th, 2023, we see this article, gold as international reserves, a barbaric relic, no more? No, not at all. Which is why they talked about the corona. They were telling you that the crown chakra is being activated. So here's the summary. After moving slowly downward for the better part of 4 decades, central bank gold holdings have risen since the global financial crisis. We identify 14 active diversifiers defined as countries that purchase gold and raised its share in total reserves by at least 5 percentage points over the last 2 decades. In contrast to the diversification of foreign currency reserves, which has been undertaken by advanced and developing countries, central banks alike. So even your third world countries or your developing countries, they've also been diversifying their portfolio by having gold, including gold in their emerging markets. We document 2 sets of factors contributing to this trend. The first factor is that gold appeals to central banks, to their reserve managers, as a safe haven in periods of economic, financial, and geopolitical volatility. When the return on alternative financial assets is low, people are not getting a great return on their investment when you don't have high interest rates, but inflation is high and the dollar is practically decimated, because you all know over here that the dollar lost 98% of its purchasing power during the global pandemic. That was a plan, but I'm telling you, behind the scenes, the Federal Reserve knew that they couldn't keep up with this charade anyway, okay? So behind the scenes, they knew their time was over. They did what all empires do, and I've said this many times. At the end of every empire, they print up the money, they rack up the debt, they spin up the credit, then they implode that system, crack, boom, crash that system, and move to a sound monetary system. What is a sound monetary system except for what it's always been through eons? God's money, gold, silver, hard assets. So this is something that is an economic principle that they've always done throughout history. The second factor is the imposition of financial sanctions by the United States, United Kingdom, Europe, the European Union, and Japan, the main reserve issuing economies, is associated with an increase in the share of central bank reserves held in the form of gold. So when people or countries put a sanction on other countries, the answer, the clap back, the response is to drop the fiat dollar and move towards gold as a method of trade. So this is it. This is what I'm telling you, family, that we are moving towards the gold standard. Actually, you saw the article that said the world is hurtling back towards using gold as money. Let me show you another article that confirms that. So when I did the podcast a while ago about the 42 states that repealed taxes on precious metals, that was our key. That was letting us know that we're there, that even the United States is responding to the world or the East, the other countries moving towards gold and leaving the United States dollar. So they're saying we lost, they moved away from the United States hegemony. That was the United States Incorporated. That was the corporation or bloodline family that took over or usurped our lawful government, the republic. When they took over our republic, you all know, they created a corporation, corpse, dead body, a corporate entity, a dead entity. They pay attention to their wording. And then they registered it. They did that in 1871 when they usurped our authority and our government, not just here in America, but all over the world. And that United States Incorporated was tied to the Vatican. It was tied to the Pope and the Vatican and their powers. That's what gave the Vatican the authority to write the letter that we call motu proprio, announcing to President Obama, the president at the time, that it's over for us. That's what gave him the authority, is that he owned the United States Incorporated. And we know that the national symbol of the United States Incorporated and the Vatican, which was the overall umbrella or the owner of the corporation, was the Roman Empire, and their national symbol was the eagle, which is why the Eagles lost the Super Bowl. Again, pay attention to signs and symbols. Signs and symbols. The Eagles lost because their time has ended, it's collapsed. So when you see that that time is over, then you know that it's time for the indigenous government to come back, the natural government to come back online. So here's the second article that says gold's return as money. That was published February 17th. And the name of this article, this publication, is LouRockwell.com. Again, it's basically the same the same article, that the consequence of Russia and her Asian allies embracing gold backing. Currencies were poorly understood by the West. And it talks about how this move towards gold will lead to the destruction of the global fiat currency system. So the response to all of this, the fiat currency system losing its power or being decimated for the countries, was to move towards gold. Now, what is our response here in the United States? And I kept saying, be encouraged. It may look like the United States is going to suffer, but the United States also agreed to return to the gold standard. When those countries met through Project Sandman, the United States was a part of that agreement. We just didn't know it over here. So I'm going to show you an article from the video that Andy Schectman and I did. For those of you who don't know, Andy Schectman is the CEO of Miles Franklin Precious Metals Company. He is known as the Gold CEO, and I call him the Gold Guru. He is one of the most sought after speakers in this precious metal space, because he's been saying all the time. He has been saying for a long time that, the United States dollar is losing its power, and the best way to preserve it is through putting it in a hard asset. So let me show you some articles that he brought out. Here, I'm going to show you this video that he and I did, so you can know where to go. This is what the video did. The reason why I'm bringing up this video is because I want you to see how America is responding to these countries leaving the fiat dollar and going to gold. So here's the article. Here's the video right here. Andy Schectman, countries and states return to gold as money. And I tag Arcadia Economics because Chris Marcus, who is a mutual friend, actually introduced me to Andy Schectman, the CEO of Miles Franklin. So I had to give homage. It was my great pleasure to give him homage and to give him a notable mention, that he is the reason why I have a relationship and affiliation with Miles Franklin. Arcadia Economics is this business. Chris Marcus will be on our channel sometime, hopefully next week, if he's able to do it. He has a conference that he calls the Silver Fest yearly, and where he talks about precious metals, but especially silver. And he has really inspired my joy and love and enthusiasm for silver. So I tagged him in this video because he's a mutual friend. So in here, you will see all the articles. Please, family, when you look at the videos, go to the description section and look at the articles, because those articles will serve to be the citation from which I get my information, and it'll support my assertions, so that you know that, I have something to back me up and I'm not just lying. So we're going to go here to the Wyoming article, and let me get back. And then I'm going to pull up the Kansas article so that you all can see what we've been talking about. Also, I'm going to bring up the article about 42 states repealing the taxes on precious metals, because when the 42 states repealed the taxes on precious metals, basically what they were doing was freeing up metals to be used as sound money. So again, that is the hello everybody. That it was there an EBS in Florida? I didn't hear about it. I don't know. So let's get to, I'm going to bring up the article about the 42 states, and then I'm going to talk to you about the articles that Andy Scheckman talked to you about. So here we go. This is, the United States is not going to get left behind. I want you to be encouraged. Again, NESARA is here. So if anybody thinks that it's not, or they're worried or kind of stressed out, what's taking so long, we're here. So for why 42 states have removed taxes from the purchase of gold and silver. Taxing the exchange of dollars for the monetary metals is an atrocious policy for many reasons. So it talks about how sound money legislation across the United States last year was really good for us in terms of taking off or removing the taxes. So they build upon success enjoyed by sound money advocates in Arkansas and Ohio. Last year, more than a half dozen states now considered legislation that rolls back discriminatory taxes and regulations on the sale, use, and purchase of gold and silver. To date, 42 states have removed some or all taxes from the purchase of gold and silver, and there were new bills pending now in 5 of the 8 remaining states: Tennessee, Mississippi, Kentucky, Hawaii, and New Jersey. The point of bringing that up about these 5 is because 42 states had removed the taxes, and that meant you had eight left. But then this, what they went on to say, but 5 of those 8 had pending bills on the table to remove the state taxes. So again, when you take off the tax from precious metals, then essentially you're freeing up them precious metals, and you're identifying precious metals, as legal tender. We already know it's lawful money because it's lawful according to our Constitution, but according to the states and going through those processes and procedures of introducing a bill and passing a bill, it's going to be legal tender. Now, let me help everybody to you already know this, but just to reiterate, there were 2 systems running concurrently side by side. The Republic, our lawful government of the United States, or of America, and then those bloodline families that usurped authority or took over power and tried to mask this one here and create their own system called the United States Incorporated in 1871 with the charter and registered in Delaware, owned by the Vatican, which is part of, we talk about the United States Incorporated, part of the Holy Roman Empire. They had power over here, and they had created their own system. It was alignment with the Federal Reserve System that was printing money backed by nothing, also using credit, anything to enslave the people, creating birth certificates and making them, turn them into bonds, putting them on the stock market, having them circulate on the stock market, earning all this money to enrich themselves. But you still had the Republic right here, our lawful government and our lawful Constitution. Well, according to the laws of the land, the Constitution based on common law and natural law, we had our own sound monetary system, which was based on gold and silver. Both of these governments were running concurrently, side by side, at the same time. So when they say we're going to have a restored republic, it's still here. It's always been here. It's always been operating. This one just was so loud. It had all these statutes, codes, policies. That's why you have policy enforcers known as police officers. They're not a part necessarily the sheriff or the sheriff, which was a part of the Constitution, that department that would enforce these laws. They were policy enforcers to enforce this entity's policies, procedures, etc. The brilliance of the white hats that were in power is that they said, we know the Constitution exists. We know we have common law and the laws of the land, but we're going to use the system and their ways, their policies, their procedures, their statutes against them and use their own system to destroy themselves. So what they did, they introduced House bills, Senate bills, legislation to repeal the taxes from gold and silver so that we can use it as legal tender and or lawful money. Okay, so they used the procedures of the system to take down the system. How amazing and wise is that? Talking about being wise as a serpent, that was simply amazing. So here we go. Now I want to bring up to you now the two articles that Andy Schachman brought up. For any of you who did not see that video on yesterday, this is in alignment with what I talked about with the 42 states repealing the state taxes. So what we're talking about is how the United States is also a part of this movement away from fiat backed by nothing. And let me bring up something else about those greenback dollars. It was a commonly known theme among the so-called elite that they put curses on those dollars, spells. They worked their own kind of black magic on those dollars, which is why billionaires do not carry greenbacks. They don't want that filthy stuff, the spells, the word. Remember, words cast spells. So they would put certain words on there, do certain magic. And I don't say I necessarily believe in magic, but they would use certain rituals, I'll put it that way, rites and things to put on the dollar such that people who are higher up, billionaires, they wouldn't carry greenback dollars because they didn't want that type of energy in their wallet, on their persons. Okay, so this is really interesting how the dollar, that fiat-based system, would have spells cast upon it, words and writings on it, some of which were not benevolent. So we're decimating that and returning to a gold system. Here's how the United States is responding. The Mises Institute is an institute that teaches Austrian economics. So most of your economists now are Keynesian economics. They have their own economic principle, their own framework for how they do things, versus what happens over here with the Mises Institute was their Austrian economists. Austrian economists believe in free markets and they believe in sound money being gold and silver. Keynesian economists deal with stock markets and those type of fiat-based systems, things attached to the dollar, the debt, and all that system. That's all being done away with. So this is what the Mises Institute, and I noticed because when I was working on my MBA, my Master's in Business Administration, I said, you know what? I want to learn from an institution that actually teaches about sound money and free markets. And that's where I came upon the Mises Institute. But Andy and I happen to be really like in sync when it comes to what's going on, because I had no idea he was going to bring up this article from the Mises Institute, which talks about the Wyoming Senate voting to hold, invest, and receive tax payments in gold and silver. This is important. It's important because we know that, some taxes are going to be removed and there will only be a 14% tax on big ticket items. But for the sake of this discussion on precious monies and sound money, let's look at what Wyoming is doing. So Wyoming published this article, or someone from there, or someone, I should say, from the Mises Institute published this article about Wyoming. And it says that their Senate votes to hold, invest, and receive tax payments in gold and silver, that they voted 16 to 15 on a bipartisan basis. That was on February the 2nd, 2023, to pass a bill prompting the Wyoming State Treasurer to hold gold and silver, specie, to protect the state, as well as establish a process to receive certain tax payments in specie. So the bill that they introduced was SF 101. It amends and further implements the Wyoming Legal Tender Act. Here's that word, legal tender, a popular 2018 law. See that law that came under 45. That's important to note because he always said that he was going to restore us back to the gold standard. Now, people who didn't understand what the gold standard was, or money being defined as gold and silver, didn't know what he was talking about. So it is based upon a popular 2018 law that had removed all tax liability from gold and silver transactions and affirmed that the monetary metals are legal tender in Wyoming. Senate File 101 prompts the Wyoming State Treasurer to create a formal system to deal directly in constitutional money Constitutional money, gold and silver, a system that will also include holding gold as an asset to help the cowboy state hedge against its high exposure to Federal Reserve note dollars and potentially invest in precious metal leases and bonds. So that's what we heard from Wyoming. This is again is letting us see that the United States is actually answering the whole question of will we also return to the gold standard? And you all know I've been saying for the longest, y'all kept saying, ask Andy if we're moving to the gold standard. I finally did ask him, I want to say at the end of last year. And here's our answer. He could only say, well, he could tell us it certainly looks that way. It was a little premature to say that, but now we actually see that, yes, the United States is answering the whole question, will we also return to gold as money? And here's an interesting state, because what did you all, somebody told me, was Kansas where the Wizard of Oz allegedly happened? I think so. So look at what Kansas is doing. February 22nd, 2023, it says, the House is now in session. So House Bill 2405 establishes Kansas Legal Tender Act and provides for an income tax subtraction modification for the sales of specie. Specie seems to be in alignment with what silver is. So this is Kansas. They're established a Legal Tender Act and provides an income tax subtraction modification. So we see that the United States is moving towards the gold standard, as well as all these countries that have left the United States dollar. Is happening, family. However, again, what I wanted to stress is even if you don't have within your budget to invest in gold, silver is a great investment. I was just listening in. I was a part of a silver conference, and I heard, and I had to reiterate or replay it for myself before I got online today, that there is a high demand for silver. And I'm just looking at what they said about silver. They said the global demand is up by 18%. The industrial demand for silver is up by 16%. The jewelry demand is up by 29%. And the silverware demand is up by 72%. So silver is in high demand. And right now the price is being severely suppressed. It's below $22 an ounce. You can always invest in silver in these ways: jewelry, silverware, constitutional silver being those coins that were minted before 1964. What else? Silver rounds, silver bars, silver shots, silver ringlets. So however you desire to, you can invest in gold and silver, because gold and silver, they are sound money. What does the money do? Follow the money. The billionaires are getting gold and silver. Your Elon Musk, those people who are really investing in technology, high technology, they are investing in silver. Your central banks, they are investing in gold. As I said before, let's see if I can find that article that gold, let's see, what was it? Central banks hoarded gold in the amount of 400 tons. Let's see if I can bring that up for you. I know you've seen it before. I brought it up many times, but I want you to see this for yourself. Again, the money, where's the money going? The safe haven for a lot of them is sound money. And you all are talking about alternative methods. So alternative methods of investing or putting your greenbacks into something that is safe include sound money, silver and gold. Let me see if I can get to that article about central banks. But it's important for me to bring this up just so you can see what's going on behind the scenes. And now it's really at the forefront. People just don't know where to look. Central bank gold buying hits historically high levels in the third quarter. So that was last year. November the 8th, 2022, central banks added nearly 400 tons of gold in the third quarter, according to data that was compiled by the World Gold Council. This was 300% higher than Q3 of 2021, and it came in as the largest quarterly increase in central bank gold reserves since the World Gold Council started keeping record in 2000. So it talks about how their net increase, which was 393 ton net increase in central bank gold reserves in Q3, pushed the total for 2022 to 630 tons. That's higher than any annual increase in central bank gold purchases since 1967. If we can't see that NESARA is here, that our golden era is here, that the time of a spiritual revival and jet jubilee is here, then we just need to keep producing more articles to inspire us and encourage us to see that the Creator desires for us to know that our time of sovereignty and jubilee and even debt jubilee is right here, right now. According to the World Gold Council, the official central bank gold demand in Q3 was the combination of reported purchases and a substantial estimate for unreported buying. So it's not uncommon. This is not uncommon, as not all official institutes publicly report their gold holdings. So what they were saying was we had a high amount of gold, or banks hoarding gold and record demands, but there was also some demand of gold that had occurred that went unreported, and is not uncommon. So in other words, it's very common to have a practice of hoarding gold but not reporting it, or a practice of investing in something and not reporting it. And can you blame it? If you tell people what's in your hand, they'll probably know the game. They'll know your plans for the future. So what they found out later in another article was that one of those mystery buyers was actually China, as I said or iterated earlier. Turkey ranks as the largest reported gold buyer that year. That was in 2022, I think. The country has been dealing with a currency crisis, with the Turkish lira falling by 52%. So then it goes on to talk about how the Turkish central banks added 31 tons of gold to its reserves in the third quarter. So we're talking about how the third quarter was a quarter that was on the records as being one of the most prolific quarters in terms of gold buying between central banks. So Turkey added 95 tons of gold to its hoard. Its gold reserves now stand at 489. Then it talks about Uzbekistan, and it talks about how they significantly increased their gold hoarding. Kazakhstan, and it goes on to talk about more and more banks. The Reserve Bank of India added another 17 tons of gold to its holdings in Q3. And I believe India actually just added silver. Let me see if I can find that. India silver holding. See if I can find that. Because I heard something about silver reserves in India. Why the demand for silver is soaring in India? Wow, this is an interesting article. I'm going to show you that one too. While we're talking about precious metals, you see, these countries are preparing for something. Yes, in one sense, they were preparing to fight against inflation. And yes, there was their clapback or the response to the dollar decimating in value. But this has always been planned behind the scene. It's a part of NESARA. Here you go. This was published by the nationalnews.com network. It was published, right here it says Wednesday, February 22nd. I don't know if they just put today's date up there, or if this was just published. No, it was published August 22nd, 2022. So why the demand for silver is soaring in India. And you all know that some people are invested in the Indian rupee, the Indonesian rupiah, and the Indian rupee. So customers mainly buy bars and coins, but jewelry is also growing in popularity. Remember, I said at the silver conference about which I was a part of today, said that there's a global demand for silver, and it increased by 18%. The industrial demand increased by 16%. The jewelry demand increased by 29%. and silverware demand increased by 72%. So in India, they are really about their precious metals. Even when young women in the villages get married, they gift them with gold so that they can have wealth, so they can have a hard asset, because precious metals, that's wealth. It's something you can pass down to your generations. Remember, there is a scripture that says that a wise man creates an inheritance for his children's children. The latter part of that says that, and the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous. So we do know that all the things, nefarious things that these wicked people have done has caused them to lose their assets. Their assets were frozen. Those assets will go back into the trust that will then take care of humanity. So that's the part that talks about the wealth of the wicked is stored up or laid up for the righteous. But a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. One of those things that people have historically seen as an inheritance to leave to your posterity or your future generations was by having gold and silver. So this is why in India, we're going to talk about silver in a minute, gold is passed down to the bride so that she can have wealth for herself. So yes, her husband's going to take care of her. He's the provider and the protector, but she also has a safe haven. She has wealth. They have something that they can pass down to their children to be used as well. So this is now getting back to silver, why the demand for silver is soaring in India. Article edited by or written by Rebecca Bundhan. It says this is 1 kilogram of silver bar. An Indian customer mainly buys bars and coins, but jewelry is also growing in popularity, according to this Bloomberg article. India's love for gold is well known, and I talked about that. Even in the villages, they know that wealth is gold. That precious metals is equivalent to wealth. And I thought that was interesting, and I did bring it up to Andy Sheckman. I said, growing up, my great grandfather, they had this 222. Yay, 222. That's a special time. Thank you for bringing that up. You're welcome, Sister Mary. She says, thank you. I appreciate you. Growing up in poverty. Now, my great-great-grandfather had money. He had wealth. He had precious metals. I remember touching the metals. I remember when he passed, he actually left it for his future generation, for his great-grandchildren. But our parents didn't really know the value of the antiquated silver and gold. So, so they used it for other things and gave offerings like to the spiritual places of worship. And I'm very grateful that they did that, even though I wish we had held on to that wealth, because we grew up in abject poverty, but they didn't know. But the good news, and this is why I say I always look for a silver lining in anything that happens. The good news is that I have memories of holding grandfather's silver in my hand, seeing those bags. So at 7, and I knew he had left it for us. But as we got older and our parents were struggling, they're in poverty, they believe, according to their spiritual belief, that if they gave it to their spiritual institution, because it was all we had, that we would be blessed, right? So they did the best that they knew. The good news in all that is that I remember. I do give thanks and praise and thanksgiving to those institutions for the spiritual things that I did learn. Like I learned how to read from going to those schools and from my mom, being a part of those institutions, and she making us do reports and mathematics and all those things. Before school started, I knew how to read. I knew math facts and all that. So I give thanks to those institutions. I do kind of wish we held on to that wealth, but the good news is I got to feel it. I got to touch it, so that when I got much, much older into my middle-age years and I start to hear about precious metals, it reignited, it awakened those memories from my great-grandfather having houses, my great-grandfather houses, Manuel Gomez, he's from Colombia, houses and precious metals and bags of coins and jewelry. I remember holding it, so it awakened me and it just lit a fire inside me. And then when I attended Chris Marcus's Silver Fest with Arcadia Economics, please follow him on YouTube. He's a mutual friend of mine and Andy Sheckman's. I mean, it just did something to me, like it just completely shook me. I had my own spiritual revival. So everything happens in life for a reason. Back to India. It's well known that they love gold. Oh, I was going to say, I told Andy, growing up poor, We always focused on the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous. So we just waiting for the wicked to die, right? But we didn't focus on the scriptures that says a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. Imagine if we had focused on that part of the scripture. Then we would have said to ourselves, how do you leave an inheritance? How do you leave wealth preservation, wealth building? How do you do that? The foundations throughout many civilizations is marriage, having a marriage, a partner, a companion with whom you have you can work synergistically and you share the same vision and you have children and you create. Well, that's a lot the way many cultures have built wealth. What are other ways to build wealth? Well, that's up to you and me to decide. And we'll talk about that later about wealth and how you can protect your dollar in terms of investments. I'm going to make a note so I can remember that. So imagine if we had focused on that part of the scripture, a wise man. So we would have said, well, what is wisdom? Okay, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom with all thy getting, and with all thy getting understanding. It's knowledge, knowing how to apply knowledge and knowing how to apply knowledge. So we would have first asked ourselves, what is wisdom? What does a wise man do? He leaves an inheritance. How do you create inheritance? What is an inheritance? It includes wealth. What is wealth? Precious metals is wealth. Land is wealth. Family is wealth. Values, having a moral system, moral values and a principle system. That's wealth, because those are things that you can pass down to your posterity, to your children's children. Good health is wealth, because you won't be able to enjoy the things that you worked hard for if you don't have good health. Farming, what else? Agriculture, that's all wealth. Good, healthy food, clean water. We didn't focus on that part of scripture, but we have an opportunity to do it now, to be wise and leave an inheritance for our children's children. And again, the foundation of many cultures to build wealth is family. And the foundation of family for many cultures is marriage. I believe we're going to get back to a way of life, whether it's through institutional, I don't know how that will look, or we would just align ourselves with higher principles in terms of mating, or if you do it alone, you will know how to gather wealth to leave that for your children's children. Back to India. Their love for gold is well known, which is one of the reasons why they even pass gold down to their young brides in the villages. But now another metal has started to shine brightly. And this is a jeweler, Kumar Jain, says he is noticing a rise in the demand for silver at his store located in a bustling area in Mumbai. Gold prices have gone up so high, so people have diverted to silver because of their budget, says that buyer. And he says that buyers are anticipating that the value of silver will rise. Silver imports into India surged to 5,100 tons in the first 7 months of the year, according to data from India's Ministry of Commerce and Industry. The country's silver imports for the whole of last year stood at 2,773 tons tons, and at 2,218 tons in 2020 and 5,969 in tons in 2019. Silver is also considered a safe haven. It's not just gold. Silver, they said, along with gold, and with the recent fall in the prices, market participations have grabbed the opportunity to accumulate the metal. So you have countries like India accumulating silver. Imagine how their currency is about to look with the gold and silver hoardings to support or back their Indian rupee. Hint, hint. So you see that silver now is on the rise. They says we are out of lockdown. They were out of the lockdown and the pandemic. So investing in the white metal amid India's festive and wedding seasons have become even more attractive, he adds, with people typically looking to make big purchases during the festive season, which is underway in their country. So if you are invested in the Indian rupee, you can see that they have gold and silver to back them. Somebody said that they bought silver from the local pawn shop. Thank you. So what I'm saying is a safe haven from the United States dollar being decimated or decreasing in value is precious metals. is gold and silver. Follow the money. Central banks are hoarding gold. Countries are hoarding gold, having their gold repatriated back to them. Countries are also hoarding silver. The demand for silver will increase because of the technology and because of silver's industrial purposes. As the demand increases, the supply will become an issue, but the price will increase as the demand increases. So get in on precious metals if you're interested while you can. But another way to protect yourself, and I talked about this when I asked Andy Schectman, the CEO of Miles Franklin. He's been doing this for 33 years, 34 this year, 34 years with his dad. He started the family business, when he was 19. He knows what's going on in the gold market. He can see that the dollar is being devalued, and he's been screaming and talking about this, prophesying that this time would come. So I asked him, what do we do with the dollar decreasing in value significantly? Because we saw on the time clock, the dollar plunged to zero. The dollar to silver ratio is zero. The dollar to oil ratio is now zero. The dollar to gold ratio is now zero. We can see that they're planning something differently, that they're decimating the whole system. How do we protect ourselves? I asked Andy. And he said, well, you have to ask yourself, how long do you want to be a product of the system, or how long do you want to be a victim of the dollar or fiat-based system? You don't want to do that. Then look towards things that can protect you against it, like silver and gold, precious metals, like currencies that are being revalued against the United States dollar. Look at all the countries that have left the United States dollar. Look at the prime ministers, the presidents, the country leaders who have said, we are revaluing our currency against the United States dollar. Look at those countries that are hoarding gold and silver and saying, we're going to clap back at the United States for suppressing us through forcing us to use the United States dollar. So investing in currencies, in exotic currencies, foreign currencies that will revalue, is another way to protect yourself. It looks like this is for educational and entertainment purposes only, since I'm not a financial advisor. But let's use our intuition. Follow your heart, follow your intuition, use your discernment to see if these things make sense to you. Precious metals, exotic currency. This is what other people are doing. Farmland. You can only go right with farmland, right? Because farmland produces good, healthy vegetables, right? You gotta eat. You have to be able to feed your community, your family members, your posterity. Farming is a good way. A business, so that we can do peer-to-peer interactions and we don't need a central banking system, right? Investing in your business, investing in your family, invest in your community, in the people, because when these companies crash, these people who have been participating in nefarious actions that will get caught up in the stock market being decimated, because you see that the stock market, right, is collapsing. I showed you that. When the stock market collapses, and people and these companies cease to exist, along with them doing massive layoffs, you and I are going to have to learn how to live, right? The best way to be able to survive when it all falls down, the best way for us to be able to make it is to do peer-to-peer interaction, to borrow with each other, to learn how to work together. So I'm going to you, who's the butcher for my meat, but I have farmland. I'm looking for the article about the stock market. I have farmland, so I'm going to produce fruits and vegetables for you. You know how to sew clothes, so I'm going to have you to make my clothes. I'm not going to depend on Walmart. Walmart might not even be here, especially if their stocks crash and collapse. They're already laying off by the tens of thousands. So what am I going to do? I'm going to allow you to make my clothes. I can't find the article. I don't see the article. I will put the article in here later on in the description section that actually talks about, I might have gotten rid of it. It talks about, the stock market. So investing in people, investing in people's dreams and their businesses so that we can support each other when the system collapses. The big money values family. Okay. Typically, these families, these bloodline families and other families, families that are doing well, even in America, they value family, which is why they marry. They marry because they know that one of the principles of marriage is building wealth. So while we've been here having a plan for the weekend, we're gonna kick it this weekend, we're gonna party. Girl, what you doing this weekend? Girl, what you gonna do tomorrow? You have families who plan for hundreds of years. Hundreds of years they've been planning for their posterity. So invest in family. That is your wealth. Invest in community, invest in food and water and health and what else? In the businesses and visions of the people in your community so that when it all falls down, when the system collapses, the system as we know it will be okay and we'll be able to support and encourage each other. I'm telling you, we are moving to a very joyous time, a happy time where we'll have new technologies that have been released. We're moving to a time where the people who hold these exotic currencies will revalue, or I'm sorry, will exchange those currencies once they revalue or they have the correct value placed on them. Once you have a global currency reset based on a new system that is backed by assets like silver, gold, palladium, platinum, oil, and all those things, good soil. We're moving to an exciting time. We just will not have those corporations lording over us, dictating what we're going to eat, how we're going to eat, what clothes we can wear, what kind of hair products to use, which are laced with chemicals that are harming us. We won't be able even to go to some of these medical institutions that have not worked for our highest good. We will then have to go to that person who's been studying herbs, that person who has fresh fruits and vegetables like Dr. Sadie had, that person who's been cleaning the water with silver and other modalities. We're going to be able to go to one another. This is what big money people have done. Invested in eating well, invested in their health, invested in their families, and respected marriage, passed down values, whether good or bad, I don't know, passed down values to their children and left an inheritance. But you do that, it starts with a vision. They have a vision in mind. They don't have a plan for the weekend or only a 5-year plan. They have a plan for generations. So my encouragement today, I said, follow the money, because I want you to look at what these big money people are doing. They are putting their hard-earned money into something that is based on a sound system, Austrian economics, precious metals, currencies, family, values, businesses, farmland. So this is what we see actually happening, and this is how we know that NESARA is here, family. So stay encouraged. Is here. We do know that there are things like fluoride in the water and toothpaste. Some of you who will do humanitarian projects will actually clean the water for us. So thank you. I haven't heard any type of EBS system, but I'm looking forward to it. So family, our time is almost up. I didn't want to be over an hour and a half. Some people have talked about emergency broadcasting system announcements coming out very, very soon. I have not heard anything like that in Florida yet, but when we do hear it, we will know that it's over. This emergency broadcasting system will let us know that the Republic has been restored and nefarious entities have been decimated. So having said that, family, please get your families together. Let them know that the Jubilee is here. The time of rejoicing is here, because we're going to have a complete cancellation of debt. That's going to be a debt jubilee. We're going to have lots, tranches of money, they say, released into the systems, into our quantum accounts, so that we can all live a joyous life. Now, yes, we're going to eventually ascend to a time period when there won't be any money. But before we get to those higher dimensions, we're going to experience wealth, which our Creator is given to us as a reward for having suffered and gone through all this anxiety and pain from the central banking system and from these overlords that came and usurped our authority and our government. So that's it, family. I love you so much. I will plan to come back later. I love you too. If you desire to get precious metals, then please contact our friend Andy Scheckman. Send him an email, info@milesfranklin.com. Let him know that Dr. Kia Pruitt referred you, and you will get the best prices in the whole entire market. So my name is Dr. Kia Pruitt. I trust that I've shared something with you to raise your vibrations and to inspire you to create the most amazing, magnificent life that you desire and deserve. Peace, family. Bye for now.